Now we move on to my topics.
Barrett, what is your first topic?
My first topic is I'm wearing this dope ass Deadpool shirt.
Yeah, that's pretty dope.
When brought in this dope ass Deadpool Funko Pop.
His topic is Michael Bluth.
So Deadpool was very, very successful.
Yeah,
Brought in 135 million in the first weekend. The best opening weekend for an R-rated film, best preview night for an R-rated film, best opening day for an R-rated film. It broke like all of these records. And now recently, Fox has stated that they are looking to make Wolverine 3 an R-rated movie. So I want to talk about where you guys think the future of comic book movies is going, because I feel like Deadpool is weirdly enough changing a lot of that. So, and Henry, if you want to talk about your just like your quick thoughts on Deadpool, because we reviewed it, but you weren't in that video. So
I liked it.
Yeah,
it was pretty good.
You're not a huge fan of Deadpool,
no.
Just to give some context.
I've been tired of his character ever since Daniel Way wrote him a while back, and he just changed him entirely to that internet style of like, hey, I'm Deadpool, I'm crazy and wacky, chimichangas.
Yeah,
you're also like on character. You're also like on a completely different part of like the whole Marvel universe, like as of recently, like with the whole like Daredevil thing popping up and shit like that. You're like really into that right now.
So yeah, like where do you guys think the future of like comic book movies and like sort of on-screen comic book production is going? Because I was listening to Nerds of the Round Table, like I said earlier, and one of the things they were also talking about is like when Sean and Fred went to go see it, the entire time Sean was like, I want this to be a Netflix series rather than a movie, because like I know it's going to be over soon. And like I was thinking about that, like interestingly enough, of like the Netflix way, like Marvel's like Netflix and all that stuff is doing really, really well. But like the style of like TV, because Netflix's style of doing things and the structure of how they release shows is very TV like. It's 40 minutes, all these different episodes, and so. But that style of consumption of media seems to be dying out a lot. So I don't know, and also just like where you guys think like, do you think we'll be able to see more like mainstream R-rated comic book movies in the future? I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts?
I think the MCU is going to stay at a PG-13 level. Because, because it's Disney.
Yeah, it's Disney, and they already have like this. Like even if it wasn't, they already have this sort of established sort of
like the way they go about things.
No, but like they have an established tone of the universe, and if they went R, it wouldn't fit in the rest of the
turn.
Like, because like the X-Men movies have been like PG-13 and whatnot, but they still have like a tone that could still fit with an R rating.
You just throw in a few fucks and
it's less like Disney Marvel and more like future for Fox and maybe
Marvel,
DC change.
Like Disney Marvel is fun, and it's the tone is
lighthearted.
The tone is like for family audiences and whatnot. And to try to put in a character that would push an R rating would feel out of place. But that's where like the Marvel's Netflix comes in, of being able to do that and sort of still fit in the universe in a sense,
because they're
not
separated
go all out fucking crazy.
Right. Yeah, so it's like with Marvel, it's like the characters that they could use for that all are already on Netflix shows, because you got like Deadpool. I mean, Daredevil would work in an R-rated movie.
Punisher's getting introduced.
Punisher's getting his own season, I think.
And that's like the guy to be R-rated.
Jessica Jones.
With the pounding.
Moon Knight.
But that's the thing is like I still don't like those shows are great, and to an extent they still sort of sit in that like fit in that Disney Marvel universe, but there's still something like off about like the tone of the show comparing it to the movie and whatnot.
Like it's not as intense in a way, because it feels like a show. It feels like like not necessarily cheap. I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but there's a sense that I'm watching a show. Movies are dramatic, big screen, like intense. You want more of it because it's only this much. I think that if they took Deadpool and turned it into a show, it would be cheapened almost. Like it wouldn't be as good as what that was. I think
Yeah.
the movie was great, and I think people are just trying to like find something even more wrong with it instead of like just accepting that
Well,
it was a
no, and that
solid
was the thing.
thing.
Like they loved the movie. That was
Okay.
the thing.
I thought
they didn't
yeah.
they did not like it. They really really enjoyed
Okay.
it. But the thing was like Sean just wanted more. He was just like what he was saying was he thinks the comedy itself could stand up. Like he thinks it could progressively get better and better over like a 13 episode season.
Okay. That makes
Which
more
is something
sense.
like I could definitely understand to an extent. I feel like it's something that could be a little tired out, but also it could be a way to get more in depth of like why he is crazy. Because the movie itself, when he gets experimented on, there isn't a shift of like, oh, I'm crazy now. It just sort of happens at one point, which was like a little interesting. That was like one thing I forgot to bring up in our review video of there's no solid moment where he's like, I know I'm in a movie now. It just sort of like happens and it's a little weird.
Right, there's no sense of like immediate like
yeah, but
now he's
like,
Deadpool. He's just kind of been that the whole time, and they try
and
to
I feel like if you did that and put that into like sort of a Netflix structure, you could slowly get to that point of oh, he's normal, slowly being experimented on, and then now there's like this shift. And like if you did that in a Netflix structure, there's more leeway to do like his like thought bubbles and shit.
right.
That was something I really really missed. But again, they're trying to appeal to a wider audience.
I think
So that might have been a little too much to do. Was like his thought bubbles.
I think like that's the thing though, is that can also be said about a lot of the superhero things that are coming out loud. Like they can, of course, they can do a lot more with more time because they have more time. They have more episodes to make. Like you can say that about a lot of things. The thing that I wouldn't enjoy as much of the TV show thing, that I think it would either be of two things. It would either be one, we'd have a little too much Deadpool and it would kind of get a little old. It would get to the point where they'll try too hard to get more material. I think it's easier to get Deadpool with a grain of salt and get him in this kind of like movie thing where we only get a little bit of it. It won't get old. It won't get pushed on us. It won't get forced. And then there's the other thing. I want to see him with all these other X-Men characters. I want to see Cable on
and
a big screen with
like,
money
like,
put into it.
They're definitely going to be able to get Cable and more X-Men next time. It's just because they pulled a lot of their budget out last minute.
Right,
they had to do like a shit ton of rewrites apparently. And it's just because Fox, the entire time Fox was nervous. I'm slowly trying to shift this back to just the future of like comic book movies in general. We've just been sort of focusing on Deadpool. Fox was nervous, and that's totally understandable. Like, just having a PG-13 Guardians of the Galaxy movie was a huge risk for Disney. And they pulled that off because they knew what kind of tone they needed. And Fox was sort of aiming for that demographic, but trying to push it to an R extent. And that that in itself is a little scarier because I had no idea how Deadpool was going to do. Like I've been following the production of this movie for 10 years, literally since middle school. And like, I remember it being like one of the first things like reading about like on the internet, like getting into like the sort of like nerdy culture of things on the internet. I remember that being like one of the first things reading about. And so, you know, it's scary when you push, like you have like one of the first comic book, like one of the first big comic book characters in an R setting. Because he had movies like Watchmen and V for Vendetta, but those are like those are big comic books in the comic book sphere. But in the general public,
especially right now, where like
no one gave a fuck about Watchmen. No one gave a fuck about V for Vendetta. Like they're hits, they're cult hits, and they are good pieces of literature and whatnot. But like outside of the comic realm, people don't really know that.
But kids love Deadpool,
but people love Deadpool. And that's the thing, is he's become like the internet's favorite superhero without anybody probably reading any of his comics, which it's so weird. So do you like, I definitely agree with you, is like Disney probably won't change up the tone of their universe.
I I think DC will change the same because they're still trying to.
DC is trying to do what Marvel is doing. Like they're
as usual.
They're really trying to piggyback ride onto the Marvel sort of structure of things. And
I bet DC's just upset that they didn't know how well Deadpool would be until after they started working on Suicide Squad.
Yeah, they probably looked at that and they're like, "Fuck, we could have gone further with this." And then the thing is I think Deadpool did as well as it did because a lot of parents took their kids to see it and didn't realize that it was. I saw a post on Facebook. It was this mom. She's like 10 minutes into Deadpool, and I dragged my son out of the theater. They should have. I really should have done my research before going to see this movie. And someone commented on it. It's like, yeah, like they should have really advertised it more of like it's not like an average comic book movie, and they should have given it like a more appropriate rating. And someone responded to them like an R rating.
Yeah,
like the movie was actually
it was there
rated.
It was there.
It's like when a bunch of people brought their kids to see Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, it's a fantasy movie.
Yeah, but it's fucking rated R. Like
this is gonna be your rant.
Don't be an idiot.
So, but I think it's interesting that Fox is already looking to, because of the success of Deadpool, of looking at making Wolverine 3 an R-rated movie, and maybe one day, not anytime soon, but maybe one day Disney will look at it and be like, hey, let's try to look at these smaller projects that we can do and make it rated R. Because that's the thing is, parents are upset because of Deadpool, because it's rated R and all of this stuff. Because they think comic book, like superheroes are for everybody and all this stuff. But you obviously aren't a comic book reader when you think comics are for all ages, because there are some fucked up comics out there.
Yeah, it's a complete...
Read Watchmen, read V for Vendetta, read fucking a lot of the Batman shit.
Good Batman shit.
Good Batman stories. Like that shit is not for children.
It's a complete whole and real form of literature. It has
and that's why I'm excited for the future, is because maybe we can start getting because superhero movies are never going to go away. That's the thing, is
especially with the technology now.
It's so weird because they're starting up, like they're basically rebooting all of comics in a way of like superhero movies are the new form of comics. Comics are dying out rapidly.
It's moving more towards the like independent comics or like
exactly.
Or
and that's because a lot of people in the comic book unit, like in the comic sphere, are really tired from all of this shit because we've gotten it for 75 years. You know?
Everyone is like, we've read every Superman story we need to, every Green Lantern story, every Spider-Man story, and now everyone's focusing on like Saga. Saga's huge right now.
Yeah,
or Sex Criminals.
Sex Criminals, Chew, like those comics are big among comic book readers, not like all the superhero comics.
Yeah. So it's interesting in a way because people like us are sort of getting tired out by this, but the general audience finally has a way to get into superheroes and all of that stuff. I don't know. It's weird.
It's two completely different types of generations kind of like crossing paths for the first time.
Yeah.
We have us who grew up with comic books and, like you said, getting tired of them, and then we have this completely new generation of kids.
Or they don't really have to read comic books to get into superheroes
because they can watch the movie. Exactly. But then now that's leading them to kind of get the comic books and kind of do their research, which isn't kind of sending the signal to the people making the comics, because it's like, oh, they want this, so they're making more of this, and then we have to look for shit like Saga and like what Sandman, right?
Sandman Overture is the big thing right now.
Right. And shit like that. So it's like this weird kind of like two generations crossing, and both of these products kind of getting completely different types of audience.
Yeah. So like the future of comics is definitely in stuff like Image and Vertigo and other like comic publishers like that. It's not in Marvel and DC.
Right. But kind of to go back on the topic itself.
Well, the question I have now is, do you guys picture DC and Marvel really compressing their comic book region and putting more focus? Like obviously they've been putting a lot more focus on the movies and the TV shows and stuff. But do you guys imagine one day of like DC and Marvel just straight up being like, we're not gonna do comics anymore. Like we're just gonna like movies and TV shows are like the new way of telling these stories, and especially like TV shows now.
You mean like just stopping the superhero thing altogether with the writing aspect of it and just
like
focusing
stopping
on other media?
Yeah, just going into other.
I would hate that, but I can see it.
Because the thing about it, like movies are much like I'm gonna do an analogy, sort of like a comparison of like. Movies are much like the monthly comic book titles. You know, you got your monthly Batman written by Scott Snyder. And then like TV shows are like the weekly comics that you get, much like Detective Comics or something. So it'd be interesting to see if like in like the next 10, 20 years, if that actually happens. So I don't know. I guess the last thing I would want to ask you, like for TV shows and movies, like because I don't know. I was just really inspired by this topic because I was listening to Nerds of the Round Table and they had like a lot of really good points. So just like the last thing I want to ask you guys is like, who do you guys favor right now in like when it comes to comics, TV shows, and like movies? Like who do you guys favor right now, like DC or Marvel?
I think that's kind of like a mixed question because depending on the media, if it's like comics or something, I'm gonna end up reading DC just because it appeals to me more. It's like Marvel's everything right now, and DC's kind of left in the back because of how bad their other type of media is, like movies and stuff like that. It's not as big. It hasn't been as good because they keep fucking hiring Zack Snyder on fucking projects.
I really, my hope is that Batman v Superman isn't shit. Like it's okay, but like it doesn't do super well.
Yeah.
And then the DC, like the people, the higher ups of like the DC like movie universe realize we should probably kick off Zack Snyder because he's not a great director. He really isn't. He's a one-hit wonder. The one good movie that he has directed so far was fucking Watchmen.
Yeah.
And the only reason why is because he stuck to the fucking source material so well.
Like, you know, it's battle. You know, it's your career's.
He actually, like, in that sense, the ending, he actually, they made more sense of it. Yeah.
Yeah, he has the fucking director syndrome where you start becoming an imposter of your own creation and you keep trying to make that fucking one hit again.
Yeah, like George A. Romero eventually became.
Exactly. And again, it all depends on the media. If it's comic books, I'm going to end up going DC because I want to search more. I'm more interested in Batman, Green Lantern, shit like that.
Like, I could not imagine not reading Batman.
Exactly. Like, if I'm going to have one, I'm going to pick my Batman.
I read a lot of comics when I was a kid, and I've really grown out of it in the last, like, 10 years or so. And that's why, like, whenever I guest on like comics and joysticks, and they're always like, they always have like the portion of the show like, what comics have you been reading? I'm like, Batman. Well, and it's like it always has to be like a week I'm reading Batman because like it only comes out once a month. So like if they ask me to come on like a week that Batman didn't come out, I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna have nothing to talk about on this show. And that's the thing is like. That's what appeal, and it's not even because Batman as a character appeals to me. It's just like Scott Snyder understands what Batman is, and that Batman should be an elemental being, and so he knows how to sort of write for Batman, but he also knows how to write for Bruce Wayne as a person. And I feel like not a lot of comic book writers right now know how to do that.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to like just like the overall universe and how many characters I like in that universe, I pull to Marvel.
Right.
But just Batman himself is like above all of like the characters in Marvel. Like I love Spider-Man. I love X-Men. I really Moon Knight is like one of my favorite characters.
Moon Knight's the shit.
You mean
like,
Batman?
Exactly. And Daredevil is like the Man Without Fear. Is like one of the first comics that I ever read was that run.
Yeah.
And I tend to like a lot more characters in the Marvel universe because they usually only have a couple of different powers, unlike DC, where you have Superman who has all of the fucking powers, and that's why I think he's the boringest fucking superhero ever, because he is the superhero.
That's what I was going to lead up to, is that when it comes to Marvel, it's a great break from everything DC, because when it comes to Marvel, I love my X-Men. I love them so much, because
such an interesting story.
Because it's
whole the only like problem is like there's sometimes too many of them.
Yeah,
and it depends on how this story is being written.
It's super overwhelming, but at the same time, it's kind of like the most relatable storyline to me, because then there's the sense of
it's because it's like about social justice, and that's a very real thing, and it's not a thing a lot of writers sort of go into, and so that's weirdly like that group is one of like the most realistic comic book groups ever, because they are looked down upon because they are different, and
it's a weird,
and
like,
just because Magneto is like one of the most interesting fucking villains, because he's at least in the movies. I'm not as familiar with his character in the comics, but like just he's great just in the movies. Of he was this World War II survivor of, you know, he was Jewish and he was being attacked for how he was, and then he turned into like mutant Hitler. Like the irony of and like he started it with good intentions, and he used to work for Professor X, and then he turned into what he was being persecuted by just for being Jewish, and
it's so crazy. And
I think Magneto might be the best villain.
Ever. Because
Marvel and DC.
Again, you've seen what he's gone through, and you feel for him, and you love him in a sense. You want him to come out of it alive, but at the same time,
it's mainly just Michael Fassbender,
because he's sexy McHunk, and you want him to come out of it, but at the same time, you also want the mutants, because you feel for them, you relate to them. They're outcasts. It's a crazy way of looking at the superhero thing as like mutants and kind of pushing that in, but also to come kind of away from that and go back to what we were talking about. Is there's that aspect of Marvel, but then there's also like the DC part of it with Batman, where like Scott Snyder especially like coming back and writing it the way he does, because he seems to understand Batman more than anybody else. And if that wasn't enough, at least like for you and me, there's a sense of home with Batman, because he's always been that. He's always been that superhero.
Always been my daddy.
He's always been the daddy. There's a sense of home with him where like I can always go back and read a Batman comic. And be fine and have fun with it.
And we got to wrap up, because our last topic is going to be like 10 minutes. But I wanted our last topic to be a little shorter, because it's dumb, but it's silly. You should check it. If you're watching this, you should check it out tomorrow. It's dumb and silly. Anyway, when it comes to comics, you and I are a little more DC. How about you?
I'm DC.
DC. How about TV?
TV, I think Marvel is where it's at.
Yeah, if like you factor in the Netflix stuff, I think I pull a little bit to Marvel.
Marvel
has
has
watching
more.
Flash recently,
Right?
And holy fuck, is that show good?
They're pulling their shit together with Flash.
Shit, that show is good.
Last Arrow, Flash.
Arrow sucks.
Yeah,
Arrow has always sucked.
Yeah,
always sucked. They obviously wanted that show to be a Batman show, and Gotham. We don't even talk about Gotham. Do you pull a little towards Marvel for TV or DC?
I'm really watching, even besides the Netflix shows.
Okay, all right. Yeah, you're not really a TV. And then movies, it's just because Marvel has the upper leg. It's Marvel.
Marvel's having it right now.
But I'm interested to see, like, going back to this topic maybe in like 2 or 3 years and seeing more DC movies come out. I'm very excited at the aspect of possibly, depending on the reception of Batman v Superman, maybe Justice League movies getting pushed back, and in place of those, Batman solo movies come out.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see where Ben Affleck's Batman goes, and where that might change the on-screen perception of what Batman is. Because just if you want, like, I agree a lot with like what Sean Pitts said on Nerds Online. I forget what episode it is, but it went up on, let's see, I think it went up on February 16th. So whatever that episode is, look it up on SoundCloud. Listen to Sean Pitts talk about like how Batman has been perceived and brought on like the movie screen and whatnot. Yeah. His points are fucking like spot on. We might have listened to it on the way back home. Just so
I want to hear what he has to say.